Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril DIL podcast. I'm just going to see Gerald Quinn recording this on a Saturday, the 50th anniversary of hip hop. We have a bunch of stuff to discuss in regards to that. Of course, you're going to hear this. You will hear this podcast probably come on Sunday, and by the time you hear this, hip hop will, it'll be 2 days old as far as the birthday celebration. The official birthday for hip hop was August 11th. But regardless, we're going to discuss that definitely with a special segment, a special deep dive into one of the greatest, no, not one of, probably the greatest battle in hip hop history. But before we get into that, just some devastating news that came across the sports world yesterday. The just sudden and tragic death of Caleb White. If you didn't hear, Caleb White was one of the top basketball players, high school basketball players in the state of Alabama. He was going to a major D1 school without question. He was ranked like the number 3 point guard, the number 3 player in Alabama, maybe I think like the top 25 point guards in the country. He passes out during a workout and basically died on the spot. Could not be brought back. They are still trying to figure out. There hasn't been an autopsy yet on what was the cause of death. Certainly speculation will run rampant, especially considering what just happened to Bronny James a few weeks back with cardiac arrest. Again, I'm not here to play doctor. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on what happened in regards to that. Certainly the information will come out soon enough. Maybe it will be out even before, as I'm recording this podcast before the weekend's out. But there's nothing worse to me in regards to someone passing away than young death, a young person. Because, you see this young man, again, we definitely deepest condolences go out to his parents, loved ones, close friends. You don't know what this young man was going to be capable of doing in the future. Like, you don't like this, to have a life cut short at 17. It's one thing. Listen, people die all the time. That's just the reality of life. You see someone in the 80s, someone died at 85, 80. I'm sure it hurts. All of us, a lot of us have lost grandparents. But, we can celebrate the lives of our grandparents or someone in their 80s or 70s and what have you, and looking back at what they've done, what they've accomplished, and, hold those moments forever, depending on how close you were to the person. For a 17-year-old, I don't know what, and again, when his funeral takes place, they'll, his parents, people close to him will celebrate him, and they'll say great things about him, and they'll have memories. I'm sure they have some great memories about him. And listen, to get to the level that he was at basketball, he certainly seemed like he was a stand-up young man. Everything that you've heard of, that you've read, has been great as far as what type of person, about the player he was, what type of person that he was. But I don't understand. I don't know how, as a parent, or as that you could even remotely celebrate your son at a funeral, or your daughter at a funeral. In this particular case, your son at a funeral. I don't even know how that would even just. Again, I can't imagine what his parents are going through right now, and unfortunately, I've gone to a couple of funerals over the last couple of years of young people in their 20s and early 20s. I've been, lost a friend as a teenager who was only 19 years old. So it is not, it's something that you really can't put your emotions on it. if you've been through it or you witness it, it's just not in a great way. It's surreal. It's almost like this is almost like this is not happening. Like no, they're not gone. They're still they're not gone. They're here. And when that reality hits that the person is no longer with you, no longer with us, then it could be just a devastating process to go through or to deal with. The impact that this young man could have had on the world as he, would have grown, as he, who knows, who knows. But the bottom line is his parents will, never see him do things that I'm sure they were looking forward to him, as far as a wedding or as far as, him having, excuse me, as far as him having, grandkids and things of that nature, things that as parents you look forward in those momentous steps of your child's life, those milestones of graduations and celebrations and what have you, and what have you. And that just got cut short with Caleb White. Again, I'm not going to get into to speculate what this what was the cause of his death. Somebody passes out. Who knows? Again, I'm not going to speculate on it, but it is something that his parents will be with them for the rest of their lives. And I guess that the only thing you can do in a situation that somebody, especially somebody from the outside, somebody like myself, as an educator, just continue to be the best possible. Continue to help our youth, continue to develop strong relationships with our youth, and continue and make every day count. Make every day count. You just never know. But again, rest in peace to young Caleb White. And again, my deepest condolences to his family. Tough to segue off that, I understand, but we will make it work. This is a very momentous weekend if you are a fan of hip hop. Before we even get into deep dive of the greatest hip hop battle in history, as hip hop celebrates, it's really amazing that not so much that hip hop has been around 50 years, but the impact that hip hop has had on every aspect of society. When you think about it, like sports, politics, pop culture, there's not one aspect of society that hip hop has not touched over the course of its 50 years. And I remember growing up, and you would hear the shit. You would hear older people talk about, this the society says, this won't last. And I heard that in the 80s, even as a kid. I heard that in the mid to late 80s that this is not going to last. This is not. This and by the time I heard it, hip hop was already 15, basically maybe 10 to 15 years in its existence. And you would hear that and just kind of dismiss it as a kid. You kind of in your own world anyway. And for me, hip hop has always been a part of my life because I've been listening to it forever, since I could remember, with the, going back to like Run DMC, Salt and Pepper, and some of the tapes, Big Daddy Kane, Heavy D. Those are some of the cats that I came up with, Rakim, that were in my era early on. And then of course the 90s hit, and we all know, anybody that's connected to hip hop, that cares about hip hop, that knows anything about hip hop, the 90s changed hip hop forever. Like the 90s were it for hip hop, as far as like it set hip hop. Like right now, hip hop is more popular than it's ever been, as far as just worldwide popularity. But the 90s were the defining decade for hip hop, with the artists that came out, and with some of them, we're going to discuss two of them shortly. The 90s defined hip hop. And again, hip hop. Thing about hip hop is it's just not the music. It's culture. It's the dread. It affects how you affected the way the types of clothes that people wear, sneakers, all that. It touches every aspect of society, and there are not too many musicals. I can't. I mean, I there's again, it is right now without question. It is the most powerful, the most popular musical genre there is in the world. It has surpassed rock, surpassed everything where hip hop is right now. And again, there's some things about hip hop right now that can be fixed. We can, there's some things if you want to nitpick, but we're not going to do that today. That's for another day. That's for another podcast. But there's no way, that anybody anticipated that hip hop would be this big. Now, the idea that anything that we as Black people touch would fail is insane to me. So the idea of somebody saying that it wouldn't last, like what have we ever done that in terms of from an artistic standpoint that wasn't going to make it, that wasn't going to last? Like what have we ever put our hands on or put our souls into that wasn't going to be that hasn't been dope? Like artistically formative, like we do it all as Black people. We dope at everything that we ever done in society. So the idea that it wasn't gonna last, which is that's comical. Now that you look back on it, but it's still here and it's stronger than ever. It's not going anywhere. It's not it's not going anywhere. And right now, I think hip hop is in despite some of the stuff that's happening with a lot of rappers being shot and killed over the last couple of years. That to be, I'm not blaming that on hip hop as much as I'm blaming that, but that's more of a societal conversation than it is a hip hop conversation. Hip hop is in the best place it's ever been because there's music. Hip hop being 50 years old, there's music for everybody. If you don't want to mess with Drake or some of the newer cats that have come out, you got Nas, 50 Cent, guys like that are still touring. Okay. You got some of these older acts are still going on these tours and selling out stadiums, selling out arenas all over the country, all over the world. So there's a time period for everybody. There's music for everybody in regards to hip hop. For everybody. So that's the beauty of of it being 50 years old, and let's be honest, the evolution of hip hop from just New York, a New York based product. Again, when I was growing up in the 80s, it was all New York. It was New York and NWA basically. Let's say New York and Los Angeles. Los Angeles was starting like. The West Coast was, coming of age with NWA, guys like DJ Quick. So I gotta give the West Coast its flowers, but it was New York. New York was the king. New York were the kings of hip hop. There's no question about it. But that all changed in 1994. 1995 with the coming with Outkast. Outkast in terms of the South. Outkast changed that. Forever, the Ghetto Boys, and then you start hearing, it started spreading to the Midwest, and then it just went all over the country, all over the world in regards to that. But it is, New York is the birthplace of hip hop. That there's no question about it. But now, 50 years later, we're really not. Are we even talking about New York hip hop right now? Are we even talking about New York as a power in hip hop? I don't think so. It's the thing about the South. The South has taken over. I think the South, Memphis, Atlanta, these places have absolutely taken over hip hop. So that's just it. I mean, the Midwest, Detroit, what have you, having those places that are absolutely taken over hip hop. Louisiana, with some of the artists that have developed. So, happy birthday to hip hop. With that being said, we are going to now deep dive one of the definitive hip hop battle, and there have been some great ones. I mean, over the course of the test of time. There have been some, some heavyweight ones. This one is clearly the like Ali Frazier. And that might not even do it justice of hip hop. And we go back to 2001, Nas versus Jay-Z. Matter of fact, it's easy to start. I know it's easy to start at 2001. Let's take it back to when this really started. And that was in 1994. So I think what gets lost about this battle is the third party. Because there was a third party. And there were a number of parties in this battle, but there was a significant third party who was considered to be one of the greatest rappers of all time. And that, of course, was the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls. I always call him Biggie Smalls. I don't care about that trademark thing that forced him to change his name. He's Biggie Smalls to me. So the Biggie Smalls aspect of this cannot be ignored or denied. So at 1994, Ready to Die comes out. Illmatic comes out. Illmatic is quickly acclaimed as just a masterpiece album, but it was Ready to Die. That was the commercial album that got the attention. And in essence, made Biggie the king of New York. And back then, if you were the king of New York, you were the king of rap from an MC standpoint, period. New York at that point still had the cachet, even though the South was coming, even though the West Coast was there with Snoop and with Tupac and all, Dr. Dre and all that, and Death Row was doing. The West Coast was popping, and the West Coast had a moment where they dominated the 90s. Let's not forget that. But New York, if you as a MC were regarded as the top MC in New York, you were regarded as the top MC in the game, period. And from 94 to his untimely death and murder in March 1997, there was no question who was the king of New York, and that was Biggie Smalls. It was just undeniable. So when you look, so Nas at that point, Nas at that point, you can go back and listen to some of the tracks. Kicking the Door was Biggie coming at Nas. The Message, that was Nas coming at Biggie. I say that because based on the research and based on even just listening to the interviews, Jay-Z really was not on the radar of Nas during that time period, to be honest with you. From 94 to 90, during that time period, Nas was focused on Biggie. He didn't even see Jay-Z. Now, in 96, Reasonable Doubt came out, classic album, Jay-Z, still to this day, Jay-Z's best album. So at that point in 96, Jay-Z was right there at that point. Like he was like, all right, this dude is, clearly talented. But remember, Jay-Z's first album came out in 96. He was 26 years old. He was young. He was old. That's old for a rapper to come out to debut. Now, he did some stuff, Hawaiian Sophie with Jazzo, if you remember that, back in the day. But this, in terms of his first debut album, that didn't come out till summer of 96, where he was 26 years old. But Nas did not see Jay-Z as a peer or as somebody who was a threat to him during that time. Nas was aiming for the top, and right after the top guy at that time, especially in New York, was Biggie Smalls, period. And that's what gets lost in all of this. So Jay-Z samples Nas not once, but twice. He samples him in Dead Presidents, that was on Reasonable Doubt. He samples him in Crack Game, which was on his second album, Volume 1, which to me was one of probably the most Crack Game, which was on Volume 1, which to me was minus the Babyface song Sunshine, was I think probably the most underappreciated album Jay-Z. Probably one or Jay-Z's. I would say it's a top 5 Jay-Z album. It probably one doesn't get the credit that it deserves, but it's definitely a top 5 Jay-Z album. So the story behind where the beef between Nas and Jay-Z started was the fact that Nas wanted to Jay-Z wanted Nas to do a voiceover. He was going to record Nas's voice live on Dead Presidents. Nas refused to. Jay-Z wanted Nas to be a part of the video. Nas refused to be a part of the video. So that was the genesis of their kind of issues as far as if you want to point back at their particular jet. Now again, Jay-Z, at this time, Jay-Z did not come after Nas at that time. He didn't come after Nas during that time. Nas comes out with the message. That was him going towards Biggie. Then Jay-Z in '97 comes out. No, this is right after Biggie dies. He comes out with "Where I'm From, the City Is Mine," basically staking his claim as the King of New York. So those two records, he stakes his claim as the King of New York. And then we go through a number of years. There are a number of subliminal tracks. This is before 2001. I'm setting up 2001. I know everybody wants to focus on 2001. There are, and I will post this once I release it, maybe before I release this podcast. There are at least I would say 11 tracks that really can tell the story of Nas versus Jay-Z, of Nas, Jay-Z, and even Biggie to a lesser extent. I'll post that. So during this time period, 97, after Big dies, after that, Jay-Z takes off. He takes off in 98, particular with Hard Knock Life. That Grammys, the album sales, 98, 99, 2000, 90. So 98 to 2000 to 98 to 2001, Jay-Z is undeniably the King of New York from that standpoint. With what the record sales, with what he was doing, his impact. He's coming out every summer at that point. He's making hit records at that point, and then we start to see some other people get involved with this. In particular, Carmen Bryant. So Carmen Bryant, who used to date Nas, who had a 10-year relationship with Nas, matter of fact, and has a child who's the mother of his oldest child, Destiny. They go through a squabble. I shouldn't even say a squabble, like it was physical. It wasn't physical. They go through a period. They go through a rough period. And she then, in essence, goes and sleeps with Jay-Z. Then you had a song, "Is That Your Chick?" comes out. That was by Memphis Bleek, and Jay-Z is probably he basically was like that. He was a Future, but that song was a Memphis Bleek song, but Jay-Z is the dominant presence on that song. "Is That Your Chick?" Like that, yeah. Memphis did his thing, and that first album, Memphis was okay, but that was Jay-Z's song. So Jay-Z was talking about Carmen Bryant on that album, on that particular song. And Nas hears the song. Carmen Bryant says that Jay-Z did it, was petty about that song, was petty in regards to that. She said that song was, without question, if you listen to the song, it's clearly based on her. Like that. I mean, there's no question about it. And again, at this point in time, remember, so 99 to, at this point in time, Jay-Z is on top without question. Nas, presumably is in somewhat of a slump, which was ridiculous. I mean, Nas comes out in 99 with 2 albums. He should have came out with Nostradamus. I Am is still one of his more underrated albums. That dropped in April of 99. Nostradamus drops in October of '99. Nostradamus is not a bad album. It's, to me, Nas' worst album is Nostradamus, but it's not a bad album. But just for for his just for the type of artist he is and where I think he's at, it was below his standards. And this again at this point, Jay-Z is clearly on top of New York. It's not even a question. And you hear, and then Jay-Z comes at him with 2000 with the Memphis Bleak song, "Is That Your Chick?" And then we get to 2001. So couple of backstories to this as well. So and I'll pull it up here. So basically, Jay-Z in 2000, right? Or in early 2001, Jay-Z introduces some new artists in regards to Bleak, Freeway. In regards to Bleak and Freeway, he introduced him the Rock family and things of that nature. He introduces them, and they do a beat. They do a song over Queen's beats, right? They do a song over all Queen's artist beats. And at this point, Nas was heated. So this is what Nas said about that. I hit him up and he said, I hit him up and he said, "Yo, God, ain't no way we was up there in Hot 97 disrespecting you. If we were, I'm telling you this. I'm lying to you, then I'm not a man. Jay knows he said this to me." I said, "Cool, bro. If you mean that much, and that means even if there was disrespect from any of his crew, he has taken the blame and said, 'Nas, my bad.' So that was the end of it." So I guess the Jay-Z, in essence, that was seemingly an apology from Jay-Z to Nas directly about that. Again, this is in 2001. They went up to Hot 97. They rapped over some Jay-Z, Beans, Freeway, rapped over some Queens beats, and Nas heard it, and immediately Nas heard it and pulled up to Jay-Z, or met up with Jay-Z not long after that. Not long after that, and then not long after that. So seemingly everything after that was good. Now let me get back to the Carmen Bryant aspect, because this is also important in regards to Carmen Bryant Jay-Z relationship. Carmen Bryant, again, Nas's ex-fiance, mother of his child, claims that she had a miscarriage by Jay-Z. Okay, she claims that she had Jay-Z's child, but she had a miscarriage. So that cannot be left out of that. And she also claims, and again, she also claims that she gave Nas advice on how to battle Jay-Z. So yeah, go check out the Carmen Bryant interview on Vlad TV. Is it or part of it on that aspect? So she feels like, along with Memphis Bleak also feels that that's this way that they were in essence responsible for this beef. Both Memphis Bleak and Carmen Bryant feel like they started this, which is they were involved, but it's completely insane that either one of them started this. They were not. Carmen Bryant was a much bigger part of it than Memphis Bleak was, but she didn't start it. That was not the start of it. The first time Nas came at Jay-Z was in a song where he was talking about TV. Lexuses, he saw where he was talking about TVs and a Lex, and he says, this is what he said about it. "I saw Jay-Z driving a Lex with TVs in them. I got rid of my Lex at that point, and I was looking for the next best thing." It wasn't a shot at Jay-Z, but it was just saying that that's the minimum you got to have. It's not a shot at him, but he was inspired. But he did inspire that line. It wasn't necessarily a shot at him, but because the song was a shot at everybody, he fell into that. But he definitely inspired that line. So in essence, that it was a shot at him. So we get to 2001, and then basically, all hell breaks loose with Summer Jam 2001, where you have Jay-Z not only come at IG in Queensbridge, but Jay-Z finally openly came at Nas, finally using, because Jay-Z had done there was a number of subliminals that Jay-Z had done over the course of his career where he didn't use Nas's name, and you can look and you can go through them in those tracks. Even The City Is Mine, where I'm from, those were, well, he did use Nas' name in where I'm from. Who's the best MC, Jay-Z, Biggie, or Nas? Biggie, Jay-Z, or Nas? So he did use Nas' name from that standpoint. But this Summer Jam 2001 was the first time he directly came after Nas with Takeover. And when that dropped, and when everybody first heard it, everybody thought that Nas's career was over. Remember, and keep this in mind. It's 2001. Nas has not dropped an album. Nas did not drop an album in 2000. The Queensbridge thing came about. That really was a commercial failure. They had some nice tracks on it, but it was like, eh. And again, Jay-Z at this point is at the top of his game, completely at the top of his game, at the top of hip hop, let alone New York. And when he dropped Takeover in 2001, and where Nas was in his career, everybody thought that Nas was done. Nas had not been, and keep in mind, Nas's mother was sick at the time. So at that point, he wasn't as focused on music as he normally was. So he comes out with Takeover. Everybody just thinks, and Takeover was a hot track. Takeover was a fire in terms of a diss record. Takeover is up there as one of the greats, one of the best diss tracks in hip hop history. So then, Nas comes back with a little slight jab on a freestyle mix. Jay rewrites Takeover or adds to Takeover and puts the Takeover that we all heard on his album. That really just, remember, the Takeover song is over 5 minutes long, and that's where it inspired, of course, Ether. Nas drops Ether in December, and Nas wins the battle in terms of New York because they took a poll in New York, and New York voted Takeover, voted Nas being the better track. And then, of course, Jay-Z had a couple of unreleased tracks that, this is why Nas won the battle. Nas won the battle. I actually think, in terms of musically, you can make a case that Takeover musically is a better song with the beat and what have you. Ether is fire. But the reason why Nas won the battle is Jay-Z released 2 tracks after that were just dreadful. One of them is unreleased, called You Don't Know. And I will play that. I'm gonna play that on this. I'm gonna play that before this segment. Parts at least 30 seconds of that. So when you hear this podcast, you will hear how bad that track was. But it's hard. Go look it up. It's an unreleased diss track called You Don't Know that was horrible. Dame Dash was infuriated by Super Ugly, and this is where Carmen Bryant came into play. This is where Carmen Bryant came into play as well. On Super Ugly, Jay-Z, basically comes out, says he slept with Carmen Bryant. You remember the line, skeeted on your babysit left rubbers in your Range Rover. Like it went like it was a horrible track. And even Jay-Z's mom came out and was like, yo, it's basically told him like pipe down. And that's in essence like ended the beef or ended the battle. But Nas and then Jay-Z released another track called You Don't Know, which a lot of people have not heard, which it was horrible. So that's why Nas won the battle, because after Ether, Nas Jay-Z released 2 more tracks. So if you think that you won the battle, if you're Jay-Z after Takeover, then you don't have to say anything else. That's it. I released Takeover, game over. If you keep releasing tracks to keep responding back and forth, then at that point it's like, and especially if the tracks are whack, which they were, then you clearly lost the battle. Like it was, we can deal as hip hop culture. We can deal with tracks, multiple tracks going back and forth. We saw it with Drake and Pusha T. Those are quality tracks, and we can judge them by there if they have multiple responses. But when your responses are terrible to the response of your initial of the initial track, then that person clearly won the battle. So Nas clearly won the battle. A lot of people will say, well, Jay-Z won the war because Nas ended up signing with Def Jam, I think in 2006. I don't subscribe to that theory because that Jay-Z signing Nas had nothing to do with them going back and forth and comparing their music and what have you. We know Jay-Z is a superior to anybody as a businessman in the rap game. As a rapper, I mean, he's the most successful rapper in the history of mankind. But in terms of that battle, it was Nas. And, when you listen, there's a race, in terms of greatest rappers of all time, it is a two-person race. And that's it. It's Nas, Jay-Z, Nas. Like, you can make a case for either one of them. I have Nas, myself being number one, especially considering this latest run that he's on with Hit Boy, with these 5 straight albums that have just, to me, has clearly separated him from Jay-Z. But, a lot of people, the Jay-Z stands, and a lot of hip-hop will say, a lot of people in hip-hop will say, it's Jay-Z that's the greatest of all time. And if you listen to some of the older rappers, some of the older rappers, go listen to some of them, they have Nas. But regardless of that, this battle defined the hip-hop era in 2001. This battle took hip-hop to another level. It produced 2 classics, The Blueprint and Blueprint and Stillmatic were both classic albums. I think Blueprint was Jay-Z's second best album behind Reasonable Doubt. I think Stillmatic was Nas's second best album behind Illmatic, to be honest with you. So, hip-hop really won from that standpoint in regards to this battle. And again, we will never see a battle like this with 2 guys in the same of this ilk in the state of New York going at it, vying not only for one of them was vying for their career, but the other one was vying to take to eliminate an opponent that he knows was just as superior to him. And listen, the Jay-Z Nas thing is fascinating. When I was doing my research from the standpoint of, you can tell some that, like, Nas was in Jay's head. Let's be honest. Like, Nas has been in Jay's head for a while. Maybe not now, because Jay-Z has, like, fuck you money, and Jay-Z really doesn't even rap anymore, to be honest with you. He'll drop a track. He'll jump on a feature here and now, here and there, but he hasn't come out with an album since 2017. So, it's 6 years. So, but during that time, 2000s, even a little bit after that, Nas was living rent free in Jay's head. There's no question about it. And there are some within the hip hop community believe that Jay-Z stole Nas's style and changed his flow similar to similar to Nas after a certain point in his career. Yeah, so again, it's hard, but it's almost, it's hard to prove that. But there are some in the hip hop community that said that Jay-Z took Nas's style. But regardless, this was the defining hip hop battle of the 2 greatest rappers in the history the history of rap, that had a number of people that thought that were involved, but probably didn't have as big as far as they thought, in terms of Carmen Bryant and Memphis Bleak. But again, I'll go back to the beginning. The underrated part of this battle was the Biggie component. Biggie and Jay-Z were close. Biggie was the king of New York for a 3-year period. It was the biggest thing in rap during that period. He's definitely a part of the genesis of this battle.
What's seldom shown is the good part. Like I said, try to bring them life, but they want dead. You won't listen. Pope is a nice guy, but don't listen. Not to piss him off quick. You won't listen. Don't you know when you defeated young punk? Won't you throw it?
We'll begin our NFL preview with three questions that could define the AFC East. Number one, will Kansas City repeat as Super Bowl champions? They are the favorites until someone knocks them off. They return the best player in the sport, in Patrick Mahomes. They have the best coach in the sport in Andy Reid. Their defense should be better. Remember, they started like 5 rookies last year. I don't expect the Chris Jones situation that will get remedied. That will get settled. Chris Jones is not going to sit out the season, and over a contract, and that he would be there, and he of course is their best outside Patrick Mahomes, maybe their best player or third best player behind Mahomes and Kelsey, but he'll be on the field. Yeah, again, Eric Bieniemy. I have all the respect in the world for Eric Bieniemy, but let's be honest, that offense, Andy Reid calls the plays. Eric Bieniemy was in charge in terms of the running backs and did some game planning on game day, but that is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's offense. So I don't expect that the Eric Bieniemy loss will impact their offense at all. Listen, you have Mahomes, you have Travis Kelsey. They have a top offensive line. They went out there and got fixed, revamped their offensive line. The interior of the offensive line is already one of the best in the league. They picked up some new tackles. They'll be fine. They are the team to beat. Remember, myself and Rob Sapp thought that last year was going to be a year that you could possibly get them and keep them out the conference championship game. Listen, I'm not saying that they're going to win the Super Bowl. We know how hard it is to repeat. There hasn't been a repeat winner since the Patriots in 03 and 04. So close. So we're talking about 20 years now. A team hasn't repeated as Super Bowl champions, but they have as good a chance as any team has had since then. They're the top of the heat right now. The rest of the NFL, AFC, the rest of the NFL is trying to catch them. Again, their defense will only be better than it was last year. Their defense will be stronger than it was last year. Will Sean Payton turn around Russell Wilson? For the Denver Broncos, that is the burning question, and one of the burning questions around the AFC. Denver's coming off one of the worst offensive years in any team that I've seen in my lifetime. They were horrible offensively, and it just went beyond statistics. Even to watch Denver play offense was painful. Now, Sean Payton, outside of Andy Reid, I think Sean Payton has been the best offensive mind in football over the last 20 years or so. We know Sean Payton is a tremendous coach. We know what he did in New Orleans and with Drew Brees. They have a lot of offensive weapons, and with the receivers, have some good running, a solid running attack. There's no reason. Listen, Sean Payton has already put the bullseye on himself for what he said about Nathaniel Hackett. I didn't understand why, you kick him, I've never heard another coach criticize another coach in terms of after he's taken his job. That was the first time I ever heard that. And I've been watching the NFL for a long 30 plus years. I've never heard another coach come at another coach that way. But regardless, maybe he's taking some pressure off Russell Wilson, putting him on himself. I don't know. Regardless, Denver at worst has to me, for them to have a successful season, has to get in the playoffs and win a playoff game. Making the playoffs is just not enough anymore in the NFL, with the fact that you have an extra round of playoffs. Because you can make the playoffs and just not be good. You can creep into the playoffs at 8-8. You could be, depending on the conference, you could be even 7-9. So it's not enough to just make the playoffs. Denver has to make the playoffs and win a playoff game in order to be remotely considered a successful season. There are some people that are high on Denver. I've heard some people that think that Denver could get to the AFC Championship. I think Denver will be improved, and that's not saying much. I do think Denver will be a playoff team. I'm not ready to put them. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team because I just don't have the faith in Russell Wilson at this point in his career. I just don't. And this is a major year because Russell Wilson is not getting any younger. If he cannot turn around Russell Wilson, then this is a disaster for that franchise moving forward, considering the money that Russell Wilson is making. So Payton has no choice, not only for this year, but for the future of that franchise, the immediate future of that franchise, to turn around Russell Wilson. Will Kellen Moore be the difference in LA? Kellen Moore, of course, was the long time the offensive coordinator for Dallas. They had some good years offensively under him in the regular season. It didn't equate in the playoffs, but in the regular season, it did. He goes to a Charger team that we know has top talent. Justin Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They have excellent receivers, Williams and Allen. The defense is good enough. It's not great, but it's good enough with Boza and Khalil Mack. They went and got some defensive tackles to try and, to improve against the run. They were horrible against the run last year. Listen, the Chargers made to the playoffs last year, and they blew like a 22, 27-point lead. So that was actually to make the playoffs and blow a 20-point lead in the playoffs is probably actually worse than missing the playoffs altogether. So them making the playoffs, that's not going to be enough. Brandon Staley, his job to me is on the line with this year. This is a make or break year for them as well, because after this year, Herbert's new contract will kick in. So this year, he's only like $8 million against the cap. That will go up to next year to about $30 million, if not more, against the cap. So that this is a monumental year for that franchise moving forward. They have to make they have to they have the talent to be in the conference championship. They have that type of talent. Anything less to me than a conference championship appearance to me is a failure, considering the talent that they have, and considering the fact that we don't know about the rest of the AFC. There are question marks in Buffalo. Can Tua stay healthy? Cincinnati has those contracts are going to start to kick in with some of their big name players. So the AFC is not outside of Kansas City. The AFC is kind of open right now. Baltimore, we'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson and with Baltimore and with them. They're not, they could be a playoff team, but they're not a dominant team. So the AFC is kind of open outside Kansas City. I think anything less than a divisional, anything less than a playoff appearance and a playoff win is a major failure. And again, if I'm ownership, the Chargers probably would have to get to the AFC Championship for me to keep Brandon Staley, because you cannot waste these years with having a top quarterback like Justin Herbert. They have too much talent to be as inconsistent as they have been. And again, you have a top quarterback. Justin Herbert is a legit top franchise caliber quarterback in this league. You cannot waste that. Especially with this extension kicking in 2024. So those are the three questions in the AFC West. Kansas City clearly still the team to beat in that division. I didn't mention the Raiders because the Raiders are not going to be any factor whatsoever. I don't, Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm a Jimmy Garoppolo fan, but the Raiders have so many issues. They will not be a factor in terms of competing for even a playoff spot. So I think the rest of the division will feast on the Raiders this year, and it will be Kansas City, and you'll have the Chargers and Denver fighting it out for that second playoff spot. Well, I'll let you go. A couple things in terms of real thoughts. So already a little bit of interesting coaching in going on in Washington. You heard this week, some players had some issues with Eric Bieniemy's coaching style, his aggressive coaching style, which we've heard before. Heard some talk about even with Kansas City. Then you have Ron Rivera come out and compare Bieniemy to coaching style to Jack Del Rio, which was just made no sense. And even Ron Rivera said it made to putting his foot in his mouth with that. Here's the bottom line to me. I don't care when you've been getting your ass kicked for the better part of 20 plus years, 24 years. You've been one of the worst perennial franchises in the NFL. I don't want to hear anything about a coach being too hard on you. One of the issues with this franchise has been a lack of discipline. And there's been a sense of entitlement. There's been a sense of players getting over, going directly to Daniel Snyder, going, not having any respect for their coaches, not having any respect. Like, it was like a country club. It's been like besides how toxic the environment has been because of Daniel Snyder, he also created a environment of where players, especially players that were making any big money on the team, could basically do whatever they want. Go around the coaches, go directly to the owner, not be no accountability. So for me, it's refreshing as a fan of the team, of the franchise, a long-time fan, to have a kick-ass coach who holds players accountable. And those players haven't won anything. They don't have a leg to stand on. There's not a player on that team that has the cachet to say, hold up, I don't appreciate this. There's not a player. Like, first of all, that type of stuff should be held. We shouldn't even have heard about it. So if someone has a problem with Eric Bieniemy, they need to go to Eric Bieniemy. The media, we shouldn't even be hearing about it, per se. Even in this time of age with social media, I understand that we shouldn't hear about it. There's a reason why like 4 or 5 franchises have dominated the NFL for the past 20, 30 years, starting with the Patriots. All those franchises at some point, there's a level of accountability held through their organization. And it starts with the coaches. So I don't want to hear it from the Washington Commander players. You don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to someone coaching you hard. And let's be honest about the NFL. I've seen both styles win. I've seen Tony Dungy be highly successful with the kind of, I ain't gonna say laissez-faire approach, but he's not a yeller. He's not a rah-rah guy. He makes clearly his points get through because his teams win. And we've also seen the aggressive Tom Coughlin in your face. If you're 5 minutes early, then you're late. That approach, we've seen that win multiple Super Bowls and be highly successful. And he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach someday. So we've seen both styles play out. And normally how it works when a coach gets fired and he was too hard, they say, well, we need to scale back and get a players coach. When the coach is too loose on the players, they say, hey, we need a more aggressive coach. So it's flavor of the month. Flavor of the week is normally whatever is what working. The bottom line is you need a level, regardless of which approach you take, your players there needs to be a level of accountability in that locker room, period. And Washington has not had that high level of accountability over the course of the better part of 24 years. So players don't have a leg to stand on. I hope Eric Bieniemy stays aggressive and continues to coach whatever style. And again, the results will speak for themselves. What happens on the field will speak for itself eventually once the season starts. Food in the water. It's been a week now, but we all saw what happened transpired in Montgomery, Alabama. It was frankly beautiful. As a black man, it was beautiful to watch. Black people come together, defend one another in a real way for something, for the right thing, not for some bullshit, but for something that's fighting for another person's, safety and what have you. It was beautiful. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. A 17-year-old swimming. You know how unselfish you got to be to swim, and that wasn't a short distance to swim and be ready to throw hands after swimming. So shout out to that young king for that. But that situation is over right now. Of course, there have been some arrests and people have turned themselves in, what have you, and we'll probably won't be talking about it probably, after tomorrow. I mean, after today or after this weekend, we probably won't be talking about it anymore because the next thing will come up. That's how the news cycle works in 2023. But the bottom line is, as African Americans, I want to see us have that same energy in terms of fighting for, this attack on our just livelihood through civil rights, through voting rights, education. I want us to keep that same energy, that same just fighting for our livelihoods in this country, because this country right now has a clear and distinct agenda in terms of attacking African Americans as a whole. And listen, that's been the case forever. You go back to slavery, that's been the case. So that's nothing new. But we can do some great things when we come together. So that was a perfect example of that. I just want us to come together that much more. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, episode 902. We certainly we will be back shortly with the next episode of Snowfall. So it'll be episode 903, season 1, episode 8 of Snowfall. I think the episode is going to call Baby Teeth. So we'll be certainly back with that. Have a great rest of your weekend. So long.